Good evening. I'm Denny Wildman. I stepped out of the field. It's gotten dark. Was with the Growmark group today over in Hershey, Pennsylvania, looking at some field trials. Dean Collimer and Nathan Hikes have worked with me for the last couple years on a number of projects, many of the projects involving materials from the Stoller Group. And we've built in furrow programs, and that's what we're looking at here today. There was a few things that we didn't get covered in the field that I thought about since leaving the field and wanted to bring to your attention. On the left here and on the right, we have corn samples that are in a replicated trial. These were samples that we pulled out of the field. There are a limited number of years, but we were doing several things while we were in the field trials. We were looking at soil differences, we were looking at stalk differences, and we were looking at certainly the ears. And we have the same basic program of an in-furrow program that I would recommend to many growers, built around Stoller's materials on the left. And on the right, we have the same Stoller materials as we do on the left, only here we've added a material from Agri-Energy called SP-1. We have 6 ears, 3 of them that Dean Collimer shucked off, and 3 of them that I went back in to see if we would see representative similarities. And over here we have ears that we pulled from the check. And stress, soil stress is a very interesting thing, that here we have the same nutritional chemistry applied in furrow, but here we applied a biological. And this biological reduced root stress. And as Jerry Stoller always says, everything starts in the roots, stress starts in the roots. And we noticed today, and in some of the other videos that were taken, there was mention of the change of the soil structure. Less platy, more granular where we use the SP-1, and also very much a different moisture content. The check, my standard program here, without the SP-1, the soil was muddy. I mean, it felt muddy. Over here, the same moisture, 10 feet away, these are 6-row replications, and the soil felt totally different. We're learning considerable from the use of SP-1 to support fertility programs. We are learning that we can improve water penetration in the soil. We are learning from work that I've worked with at Penn State with Dr. Orslick that we can hold more moisture. But a very interesting thing that I want to go back to is stress. The stress in the roots changes the cytokinin to ethylene ratio. And as the cytokinin begins to fall during pollination, the strength of the pollination falls. It's not just cytokinin, there's nutrients involved, such as calcium and boron and manganese. But if the soil is more blocky, it's much more difficult for the plant to extract these nutrients. If the soil is more blocky, there's more root stress. Root stress transfers right up into the plant. And when this root stress travels up into the plant, we had challenge at pollination. Not only with pollination, but it is somewhat noticeable that there's more mold where the SP-1 was not included in the fertility program. So if you were a dairy farmer or a chicken farmer or a hog farmer, and you had more years with a slight amount of mold that may transfer into a vomitoxin or DON or some other mycotoxin that maybe we haven't identified, that's going to put stress on your cow. No different than the stress that we were finding in the roots that created this pollination issue, did not have the fill that we have over here where we reduce stress. Now, I had some very good Stoller materials in here, and they are primary tools in my toolbox. Things like Bioforge, Extra Power. One of the ones that I really like today is Energy Power, and I really prefer when we're using tools like SP-1 that we have Energy Power applied at the same time. I see a very good coupling effect or a tandem effect when we take that chemistry from Stoller and Agri-Energy's product. But going to look at pollination, people do not understand that stress in the roots affects their pollination that they're going to have during the reproductive phase. And here, this corn is no-tilled. It is in the Chesapeake Bay area. Here we have two very similar ears. These would be the better ears here from my straight fertility program. And of course, this is what we're getting with some of the greater stress. And if this is representative, yes, it's only 6 ears, but we were doing ear counts, and the consistency of ear size was improved where that we applied SP-1 into our info program coupled with a excellent nutritional program. In closing, one of the things that I'd like to bring up, in addition to the mold differences that we're looking at, is these kernels are very, very tight on the ear. I imagine this corn is in the low 20%, probably maybe even below 20% today. And over here, we're similar, but it's much more easy to move these kernels. Again, that talks about the nick, the hit, when pollen hits the embroid and how hard it hits, and the kind of smack that you get, that I'd say in field jargon, is that the strength of that reproductive pollinization determines how large the babies, how much the babies are crying. Like Dr. Woodward would say, that the grain cries no different than a baby to call its food in from the plant. And so if you have a weaker nick because the roots were stressed, you're going to have lighter seed weight and less bushels. And we did use a yield calculator on this corn. Dean pulled it out. It's just a yield calculator to me is not the actual number that we'll probably see, but the differential was about 182 with our fertility program, and under no-till and the conditions of that field, 182 is very respectable. But over here, these ears represented, according to the yield calculator, 228 bushel. Yes, it's just some hand-selected ears, but they were plant to plant. They were not one here and one there. And with that, I would like to say thank you for your time. It was just a little bit of a discussion. I asked Nathan and Hikes and Dean Collimer if it was okay that I sit down and reiterate a few of the things that we observed today, and they said, yes, no problem. And with that, good night.